Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of From No Crypto to No Crypto. I'm the crypto coach, Blockchain Wayne. Today we're joined by Paul from Edge. Paul, thanks for joining us today for this podcast.
And of course, Wayne, thanks for having me. It's been quite a number of years. We've known each other, always chat about really cool, interesting stuff. Love to do it now with an audience and actually share what we normally just yammer about, at conferences whenever we run into each other. So let's get things out there into the broader ecosystem.
Yeah, bring in some of those great combos, whether it's at the conference or late night tacos.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's bring it in here. Yeah. So Paul, you've been in this space for quite a while, done quite a bit, really an advocate for this space. So tell everybody a little bit about your background and what brought you into this world.
My mom brought me into this world in many ways, but my background's been pretty mixed. And so I think at heart, I'm a technologist. I'm a developer. I went to school for that. Back in the days before the internet was so prolific with information on becoming a developer, people had to go to college, right? A lot of developers probably don't even have to go to college to be a software developer, at least. So went to Berkeley, studied electrical engineering, computer science, more on the computer science side. Was really fascinated by the hardware side, although I ended up working in software. Worked for NVIDIA for a number of years. That's actually really where I really gained a lot of my kind of experience and knowledge. And I was super fortunate to work with amazing people, like amazing, super smart folks for almost 10 years, probably like 7-8 years. I worked there, and I liked working with a team that wanted to solve hard problems, and for me, graphics, at the time, NVIDIA was known just for graphics, right? Now it's like AI and general computing and mining and whatnot. But at the time it was purely graphics, and I was a gamer. I think you can relate to that, right? I'm sure you played some games, Wayne. I was a gamer, and to me, I remember looking at graphics on computer screens, and especially the transition from 2D to 3D graphics. I remember when Doom came out, or Castle Wolfenstein from back in the day. And I remember thinking to myself, that to me is equivalent of magic. I have no idea what kind of magic software developers go through to put that imagery on screen. And so that became one of my most fascinated topics in computer science. And while the school I went to, Berkeley, while people regarded as a pretty good school, was unfortunately very, very lackluster in their coverage of computer graphics. So I took the one and only computer graphics class that they had for undergraduates and loved it. Loved it so much. I near failed other classes in college, right? I spent all my time in this class. I built a game. I made it networked. All the TAs wanted to play it at times. And of course, the logical, step after that, after graduating, I wanted to work for a graphics company. And I had worked originally for Chromatic Research, which was an early GPU company before the term GPU was even invented. There was a graphics chip. They got acquired / bought out / were kind of going bankrupt. And so I quickly transitioned to NVIDIA. Then I was there for almost 10 years. But to complete your answer, when I say that my life's been kind of mixed in the sense that I completely left technology for another 10 years.
Yeah.
And the most technology I had touched was being the guy that wrote, Excel sheets at a small business, or dealt with QuickBooks and finance and numbers and payment systems. I filled out the 300-question questionnaire applying for our PCI compliance for another small business, a gym that I worked for. But I'd like to say that it's kind of the combination of those two worlds of experience that made Bitcoin, when I discovered it in 2013, incredibly fascinating. It was like the technology was fascinating because I was kind of still a tech guy, but also what it could accomplish was fascinating because I was what I call kind of jaded by the system. At that time, I didn't know what to call that feeling. There was no red pill, blue pill terminology, with respect to the financial system. But to me, I was jaded by multiple aspects of the system or the narrative. Everything from, heck, obviously we just came out of COVID, and obviously I've been very vocal about the feeling that we didn't handle it well, both from vaccine deployment to lockdowns, big pharma raking in tons of money. And I felt that way before COVID, before Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And so really that disenchantment with establishment is what kind of created that alignment with Bitcoin. It's like, oh my God, everything's driven by money. This now democratizes money, gives a lot of people access, distributes the wealth. And while many people think, yeah, a lot of the Bitcoin is held by the small number addresses, that's still way more distributed than like the dollar. So I mean, that's kind of a little summary of the background where I came from, both tech and non-tech side, small business. Like I've held jobs anywhere from like bar, restaurant manager, to program manager at a climbing gym. I did my own little outdoor guiding back when I was in better shape, as opposed to a startup founder. But it all comes together, and all of the ideology kind of aligns now in the crypto ecosystem. And here I am.
Yeah, it's definitely a great story. I think that's what kind of drew me into Bitcoin as well. Wasn't as early as you, but same concept. I already had a kind of jaded from the system. My first big dive was into the pharmaceutical industry, back in 2010, 2011, and seeing
you're in the sausage factory.
Seeing what was going on, there, really opened my eyes to how messed up that system was. And then I started learning about the money and Federal Reserve and that whole rabbit hole, which it's like, okay, so money as well. Like
the same people that elevate the biggest establishments, the big pharma, government, control the money, are the ones that also dislike crypto. So I'm seeing a common thread there, right?
Yeah.
The same entities, and the people that like crypto are typically the people that are also disenchanted by kind of the big rhetoric, the big establishment, whether it be in finance, money, or like just general health and wellness, whatnot. So there's a trend there, and I found that when I discovered crypto, I started going to the meetups. I found other people in a very similar mindset, even non-crypto related.
Yeah.
Like we all kind of thought in similar manners, which admittedly, hopefully, well, friends and family of mine aren't listening. I hate to say it, but a lot of my friends and family are not in that same mindset.
Yeah.
And it was refreshing to see that there are other people like me. I wasn't just that one guy at Thanksgiving dinner, right? Like saying, hey, you guys got to wake up. Like there's problems here. And so it's good to see there's others out there. And I think it's hopefully a growing number of people as crypto wakes them up too. I've also heard other stories where they discover crypto, they're in for the money, but they stay for the movement.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
They get woken up by it, which is awesome to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you've alluded to earlier with the COVID, the whole pandemic, I think opened a lot of people's eyes to where they saw, I think it was even before COVID, September 2019, there was already cracks in the financial system. And I was posting about how we're going to, you're going to see record inflation, and there's going to be some kind of event that's going to be blamed for it. And then what happened a few months later?
Lab leaked out a virus.
It's not I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not a psychic. It's just when when you see kind of behind the curtain, what's happening behind the curtain, it's easier to point out, hey, this is what's happening.
I think every person that we thought of as a psychic really is just someone who's good at reading history.
Mm-hmm.
It's an overblown or an overstated phrase that history repeats itself, or it doesn't, it rhymes. But yeah, if you really look carefully at history, that's the thing I've started to really do now, is start studying history. I hate reading books though, like dry history books. So I'll listen to podcasts. Like Ray Dalio has been really fascinating when he covers the history of financial systems and New World Order. Listening to Twitter Spaces where people do cover that as well. They cite references in history, sometimes even by people that I don't necessarily agree with. In the TradFi world, I'm gonna hold on. So I got my light turned off here. Darn it! I'm a little bit dim here suddenly in the room. It's a problem when you have automated motion sensing lights that don't see you. But anyway, and I'll give a shout out to some of the Twitter Spaces by like Mario Nawfal holds a great Twitter space. Whether you love him or not, a lot of people dislike some aspects of his history, but at least he's got some great guests that really educate people on at least the history of financial systems, and that I definitely do appreciate.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's where I tell people to start when they ask why Bitcoin. And I'm like, well, you need to understand money and understand the history of money, understand what has happened in the past. And now required reading that I tell people all the time is Creature from Jekyll Island. Like whether you want to read it, listen to the audiobook, or even if you don't have Audible, you can listen to the whole audiobook on YouTube. Right.
I'm a big fan of audiobooks. I mean, that's the last two, what I'd call long books that I've quote unquote read, have been through audiobooks, and that have actually hugely changed my outlook on the world. Some of those are the ones that also made me feel like, we're both lied to and run by the largest establishment in our world. Two of the books that I've most recently read made me feel that way. So definitely invite people if you don't feel like you're a reader. I think there's still a lot to be gained within that audiobook scene. We all have that little idle time on the plane, in the car, riding a bike, working out. And I don't listen to music working out anymore.
Yeah,
I never
same.
listen to music. Don't get me wrong, I love music, and sometimes I wish I did, just because it's like gets you a little bit more amped. But
Yeah.
sometimes listening to this stuff on Twitter Space and podcasts actually gets me amped, right? It gets me amped about what I'm doing, gets me amped about this industry, gets me amped about the possibility of fixing what's wrong. And so I get amped in different ways. This is the current hot way that helps drive me forward.
Yeah, that's you're right about the downtime. Even getting ready in the morning, and I've even got a special pair of headphones that I wear when I go to cut my grass because I'm on that riding lawnmower for. We've got a lot of property. I'm on a lot of property.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, those headphones are perfect. They're great.
Noise canceling and whatnot.
Yeah. So I can pump that out. And same thing, I find a good podcast or Twitter Space or audiobook, and typically my go-to if I can't find a good Twitter Space or podcast to listen to at that time, I'll pop in the audiobook series from Internet of Money and just listen to Andreas.
I was going to say Andreas. It's funny because we host meetups here in our space, right? And just as early as like maybe 2 years ago, I guess now it's like 3 years ago, nobody did not know Andreas Antonopoulos.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'd say like 9 out of 10 people don't know him.
Right.
Which makes me a bit sad because I loved his talks. I loved his presence, his personality. Could be harsh at times. He can, he's got that like Greek / Middle Eastern almost accent, but whatnot. But he presented incredibly well. And what I loved was he was not just a great presenter to the layman, but he was also a technologist. So he can get very technical as necessary, and he saw it in both ways, and he described technical concepts to non-technical people insanely well.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this, Andreas, I really encourage you to get back out into the scene. I know the crypto ecosystem's changed, maybe in your eyes for the worse, because for a lot of people it may have. They view it in a certain way, and it's changed, and it might not align with their interests anymore. But I know he still does like YouTube videos and whatnot, but it's nothing like seeing him on stage.
Right. And I think
really
more
hope
people
he
need to
comes
be
out.
exposed to just some of his ideas and some of just the way he's able to phrase things. That's what I really like. So that kind of amps me up because it's a lot of what he's saying is I've heard it already. I already know the concept, but just the way it's put, I'll be constantly hitting bookmarks on the audiobook. Like, okay, I'm going to use that. It's definitely good stuff.
Is he the one narrating the audiobooks, or is it someone else?
No, it's someone else. That was the only thing.
Bummer.
Yeah, so now if you want to listen to him, here's the thing about it. All of his books, even if you don't have Audible, they're open source. So you can go to the website for it and listen to the original, because the whole books they're from the talks that he did.
And they're all on GitHub. I actually, I think he submitted a pull request to make a correction on one of his more technical books. So he's great ideologically, and from that point of view, it's like you're making it open source. People don't have to pay you a cent, And he's like, I don't care. Some people will buy it. All right, I'll make a little bit of money there from that. And he realizes when you bring value to people, the value will come back.
Absolutely.
And that value has come back to him in the sense that he's now a well-renowned speaker, at least at the time, 2-3 years ago, and could easily hit up the conference circuit, getting paid 5 figures to speak at various events for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So hopefully he makes a bit of a return. I think the newcomers to crypto, especially the 2021 influx crowd, could really use his insight. And I don't even necessarily agree with everything he has to say.
Yeah.
And that's fair. I love civil discourse and debate, but I love the way he presents it and how he at least gets people relating to crypto when they might not be able to.
Yeah, and also, a lot of the talks that he's done weren't always at Bitcoin events or even crypto events. Sometimes he was talking to bankers and financial events, and that's really what we. That's really what we
testified to, like the Canadian Senate, I believe, or Congress. I don't know their exact jurisdictional or judicial process, and I actually invited him to speak at an event that I had spoken at, I think in 2016, in Helsinki. It's an event called Slush, which is the world's largest startup investor conference. At the time, it dwarfed anything in the crypto space with 15,000 people. But obviously now, post-COVID, the crypto space has blown past that with like Bitcoin 2023 and whatnot.
Yeah.
2020, well, not 2023, 2022 and 2021 blew past that.
Yeah, 22 was big.
But obviously, being a general tech conference, they don't have the roller coaster attendance numbers that crypto
Right.
has. And so at the time, it was huge and it was so well operated. It's the most well operated conference I've ever seen in my life. And so when I spoke there, I think it was in 2016, they asked me like, hey, this is great. There's strong interest in crypto. Can you bring in anyone else? And that's when I had actually, reached out to and tried to get Andreas, and he did come and speak, and it was great to see him there and to really
Nice.
share his thoughts with like the general tech industry.
Yeah.
And the crypto talks were some of the most well attended ones. I was on a panel with I think Elizabeth Stark at the time, and then he had an awesome solo talk. So
Cool.
yeah, hope to
Yeah.
get him out there again.
Yeah, and we need more of that, because if we're just constantly having these crypto conferences where we're it's almost like an echo chamber, it becomes, because we're talking to
Yeah.
marketing. I mean, think about it. I mean, we see each other for a while. We were seeing each other every month, every couple months at a conference. You see a lot of the same people. It's an echo chamber of attendees and everything else, and having an aspect like this is going to bleed into so many different aspects of business and tech in the future, that's where we need to be meeting people where they are, instead of waiting for them to come to a crypto conference, because we're only going to grow more adoption if we grow the user base, onboard more users. But to do that, there's got to be barriers that are broken down in terms of misconceptions people have, with a lot of things as far as what this technology is, what it isn't, what is possible with it.
Yeah, we've actually, for some people that know me and know our company, they know that we actually host meetup events here in our office. About 1/3 of the space, one quarter of the space is like, uninhabited with desks. There's no desks there. So we actually use that as like a little event space. Got a little mini tiny stage, a little projector and whatnot. We got, a few dozen chairs. We could fit like 70-ish people comfortably, 100 bleeding out of it. And we've primarily hosted meetups in the crypto space, since we moved in, mainly because it seemed like the crypto industry were the most willing to do in-person events after COVID.
Yeah.
2021 hit, we moved in July of 2021, pretty much right at the start of July of 2021, we moved into the space and we started inviting the meetup groups, one which I've been a co-organizer of myself for years, and then other meetup groups, including like the Android developers, iOS developers, JavaScript developers, blah, blah, blah. And none of them would come out.
Right.
But we knew the value. I'm trying to get to the point, which is that we wanted other people, non-crypto people, coming out so that they can be immersed maybe amidst some of the more crypto scene, and that we could introduce them to crypto and Edge, maybe give them a little bit of free, Litecoin, Bitcoin, just a giveaway into the audience. But admittedly, it wasn't until more recently that we actually had some non-crypto meetups willing to come out. The first one was an AI meetup. And it was a machine learning, San Diego machine learning AI meetup that had not had an in-person event since 2020, if not 2019. This was their first in-person event. They've been like that hesitant to have one, but it packed the house. There's probably 100 plus people, 120 people that came out. And I think this is an open kind of, not calling it invite, but a wake-up call to meetup organizers out there that are doing just general tech meetups or whatnot. Is like, people do have this desire to meet in person. They want to be able to shake hands with people, say hi, break bread, do a cheers, have some beer with each other. And that's how a lot of networking, a lot of things kind of start. Yes, we've got great digital tools such as what we're using right now, to be able to communicate, but nothing beats that face-to-face interaction and the serendipity of it. So I invite those groups to kind of start, kick it off again. It's not 2021 anymore. It's not 2020 anymore. We still have a couple of meetup groups here that are still all 100% virtual. I'm like,
why?
We've got an open invite if you're a meetup group organizer in San Diego, especially in the tech space. Holler at me. We'll let you know if we can support you with a space and possibly even some sponsors that might be interested in supporting.
There you go, man. I've been looking for a reason. I'm like, when am I going to be anywhere even near or worth a hop to San Diego? I mean, I just have to plan a trip.
You guys were in LA, I think, and we didn't catch you, but I was going to say that would have been perfect to get Theo to speak at some of the crypto meetups over here.
I forgot what it was, but I had something like I even considered that. I had something
NFTLA?
like the next week. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
NFTLA, or it's called Outer Edge now, but we were there for
Yeah.
that. And it's funny enough, I never reached out to you, but I did. I was like, okay, a quick trip to San Diego, what would that look like? Maybe I'll reach out. And then I looked at my calendar. I was like, oh, I've got to be somewhere like 2 days later.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like,
Yeah.
nope,
Yeah.
that's not going to work this time. But we'll definitely figure something out. And I love, those in-person events. You're right. People really thirst for that interaction, that in-person thing. And these events that are doing virtual now, or meetups that are doing virtual, you can still have that aspect. There may still be people that can't meet in person for one reason or another, but why not do a
Stream it.
hybrid event where you can stream it? Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly. Which is what we do. Pretty much all the meetups. The meetup that at least I'm a co-organizer of, and Madison, who you've met, is at this point like one of the primary host organizers. We stream all of those.
Yeah,
For other meetup groups that come in, it's up to them if they want to stream it, and we've got the equipment. If they don't, that's fine as well.
yeah,
But yeah, you can kind of mix it up to make sure you're not excluding anybody, but at least allow for those that do care for the networking part to be a part of it. Because really, that's like the most popular part. It's the before and after, right?
oh yeah, yeah,
The speaker is kind of the topic of the night, right? Like what is it that they're talking about, but the before and after, what people like are there for, like we're having to kick people out.
yeah,
At the end of the night, they just want to
yeah,
keep chatting and chatting and chatting. And some people come like really early. It's like, hey guys, like we're still a workspace here. There's a living room. Go chill over there. And so you realize that is what people are really craving is that
absolutely.
networking.
Yeah,
Same is true for conferences, right?
yeah,
People
yeah.
crave that networking side.
Yeah, it's funny. I couldn't tell you. I've probably maybe seen one, probably two at the most speeches at most conferences I go to,
Yeah,
and
sounds about
it's
right.
typically we're out in the hall, around the vendor booths, rubbing elbows, just networking with people, making connections, because that's the real value in those events. I think of the
Exactly.
connections I made when I first started hitting the event circuit in 2018, and a lot of those connections that I made then, I work with or have some form of partnership one way or another with a lot of the people that I met
Yep.
back then.
And speaking of which, if anyone is headed to ZCon, which is at the very end of July, I think it's July 30, 31, and August 1st, I will be there along with Madison Payment from our marketing team. We'll both be there speaking at ZCon. So I invite you guys come, check out the event, especially if you're a big advocate of privacy, big fan of privacy. Zcash obviously is one of the premier kind of privacy network blockchains in the crypto ecosystem. Whether you like or don't like what they're doing with respect to Zcash, they are definitely a team that has put together some of the most important technology to help privacy within the cryptocurrency space. It's definitely been borrowed by other cryptocurrency projects, so you have to give respect where it's due, even if you might not like some of the aspects of the actual Zcash blockchain.
Yeah.
Give respect to the team that helped build it, because it's advancing our ecosystem.
Awesome. And where is that being held again?
That's right, in Barcelona. And so I
Barcelona.
look forward to actually it's gonna be my first trip out of North America, since 2021. So I've been primarily in just like Mexico, U.S. and whatnot, but finally getting over to Europe again. It's gonna be nice.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely check that out. Cool. Well, Paul, as we move on to next, I want to spend some time and let's take some time to talk about Edge and how Edge came about. I know it wasn't always called Edge. I'm sure you share that story, but
I was wearing my Airbit shirt yesterday, actually.
oh, really? Yeah, Airbits. Yeah. Yep. So tell us a little bit about what Edge is, how it came about, and we'll dive into that.
So Edge is a self-custody app that lets you buy, sell, and trade crypto. We're actually in the midst of a discussion internally in the company right now about how to brand, what exactly is Edge. And we've, a lot of people will call us a wallet because, on Twitter, it's Edge Wallet on Twitter. Does that really well describe what we are and what we do? Becomes an open-ended question that's been hotly debated within our team. Are we an exchange? Because that is actually the core focus of the functionality that you can do in Edge is a lot of exchange functionality. I think we have the richest exchange functionality of any app in the market, aside from centralized exchanges. So they obviously have very rich exchange functionality, but from the viewpoint of a self-custody app, I think we've got some of the richest functionality, and we're focused on that. So we're growing that functionality, kind of month in and out. But how it came about actually as a payments focused app, not an exchange focused app. And that's the pivot, why we rebranded the name and rebuilt the app. It came out of the meetup scene, hence the reason why we're so focused on the meetup ecosystem and, meeting with people face to face. All the co-founders came together through the San Diego meetup scene. Even the early capital that came into launching the company. And the focus was on building an app that really streamlined the user experience of key management, right? So it kind of had a dual focus. We wanted, obviously the key management, as you had kind of mentioned before we started the podcast, was, allows people to create what just feels like a regular account, log in, right? You don't see 24 words. At the time we launched Edge, it wasn't 24 words. It was, it was a file that you would save and encrypt. And so that was pretty alienating to a lot of people. And so it was really to simplify that, while still building, an app after you've logged in, building an app that made it easy for you to send and receive. And we baked in a lot of stuff that you just unheard of at the time in crypto. It had Bluetooth and NFC payments. It had rich encrypted metadata, which carries over into today. You could tag your transactions with who did you spend money to, category, notes.
Yeah.
You can even change the fiat amount at the time of that transaction. Say, hey, that wasn't $301, that was $305. And it would save all of that fully encrypted. So privacy was a big part of what we believed in from day one. Like, we wanted to give people what I call the kind of like dark wallet type of capability on privacy, but brand it as a kind of in the clear, friendly app that is broad consumer usable. And one of the companies I looked up to most in that regard, at least today, maybe not so much back then, is Apple. And while I don't believe in their closed source stance, and I don't believe in their kind of walled garden approach, I do like that they have probably deployed the most widely adopted privacy tools that most people that use it don't even know are private. Yeah. Right? The number one thing being like iMessage, right? As well, default encryption on devices. So, I mean, so much so that even the government hates it.
Yeah.
If the government hates it, you're doing something right.
You're on the right track.
You're on the right track. Well before Android and Google deployed that on their mobile phones. iPhones default encrypted, right? Like you get the phone, you set it up, you do whatever, Face ID, whatever not, but it's by default encrypted. And that's kind of our mission is to build our ideology into the app, but make it where not only the people that care about the ideology will get it, right? Where, you were talking about, sharing Edge with, I think, one of your industry contacts. You're like, that was simple, that was easy. He might have not cared about privacy and, cared about autonomy and whatnot, but he gets it. And our theory is that when the people that don't care get it, that means the people that do care much more broadly achieve that goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of where we sit. So that's kind of the history from our early days as Airbits, transitioning to Edge, which is now more exchange focused. Like, what's the definition of the app? We're still trying to figure out that one-liner.
Yeah.
Just know that it's self-custody. Number one, you own your keys, you own your funds. It has a high level of privacy. There's no such thing as 100% private. It has a high level of privacy in that we don't collect. As a company, Edge does not collect any personal information. We never know emails, phone numbers, addresses. You subscribe to our newsletter, we know your email, but we don't know what account that comes from. Yeah. So a high level of privacy and a high level of autonomy in the sense that, even if Edge were to shut down, your keys are still sitting on your phone. You can extract them. You can even transact and send and receive money to other people because that doesn't rely on our infrastructure to do so. It goes right out to the blockchain network. So hopefully that's a little recap of what we've been building.
Yeah, good stuff. And it's definitely, when I onboard a new user and I go through the Edge app, it's super easy for them. And I think a lot of people now are focused on simplicity. And just like the guy, you said, he may not care about privacy. I think in the end, people do. They just don't even know that they should care about it when it comes to that. And usually,
know how to care.
Yeah, most people don't really care until there's a problem, right? Yeah. Something happens, there's an issue, and then they're like, "Oh."
That's humanity as in general. We don't care about anything until it's a problem.
Right. So, so definitely great things there. And you mentioned open source. So everything with the Edge app is open source?
Yeah, the whole app's open source. You can actually build it yourself if you'd like. Go to our GitHub, github.com/edgeapp. You can check out the source code yourself. You can build it. If you don't trust what we're doing and you want to actually audit the code, that would be amazing. Most people say, don't look at our code, don't look at our code. No, for us, it's like it costs money to get people to look at your code. If you want to just do it yourself, please, by all means, let us know if you see any issues. Or submit submit a PR if you actually want like some little changes, fix a little bug here and there, change the UI. We can discuss it. So it is open source. And I tell people, especially that are trying to crack into the crypto space, especially as developers that are junior, one of the best ways to do so is to contribute to open source, because that's
Right.
public, visible, it's your resume, right? And for you to have a little snippet of code changes that was accepted by, a relatively high profile project that's recognizable and used and deployed, speaks magnitudes of your reputation.
Right.
Right? It's one thing for you to have an open source repo of a bunch of little demo trinket apps that you've written. That's great. But to have code that you did that got submitted and approved by a completely independent, company, entity, organization, and they absorb that into their code base, that's actually, I would call that pretty valuable. It's something that we look for when we're hiring. Like, hey, have they contributed to open source? What is that they've contributed, and was it accepted?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it just makes the ecosystem a lot better. I think when, closed source doesn't really allow a lot of growth. I mean, Bitcoin was evolved out of being open source, and I think that's made the network so strong today, because there's been so much that's been able to be contributed from so many people versus the walled gardens that let's just say our current financial systems have. Banks and
walled garden.
Yeah.
And the thing is that the crypto space has become a bit more walled garden as well, from the viewpoint of source code and open source. Most of our competitors are closed source.
Yeah.
They definitively are. And ironically, many of them are closed source but use open source. One of our biggest competitors used and I think they still do, use one of the open source libraries that we created to support one of the privacy coins that we support. But of course they absorbed that, but their entire app is now closed source from it. So it's this unfortunate reality. It is harder to be competitive in the open source space, because obviously any closed source proprietary focused company can take your work. And that's unfortunate. And I don't know how to kind of rectify that other than with weird, bizarre governmental mandates, which I wouldn't agree with, right? The only thing that I can hope for is that at the end of the day, open source ends up becoming more trusted, ends up becoming required, ends up becoming much more audited, and more secure. Like, open source does not guarantee security, right? Like, I would argue against that, even though we're open source, it doesn't guarantee security. However, a well-established and widely used open source project will trend towards being more secure, only because there's so many people that care about it and depend on it that they can actually look and make sure that what they are using is secure. So look at cryptography. Just so people know, every widely used implementation of the most popular cryptography primitives, whether it be encrypting data, doing a digital signature, which you use every time you might log into a server as a developer, right? Those are called like SSH keys. Hashing, all of the software that implements that, while that might not be the entire app that implements it, might be closed source, the software that they use for cryptography is just about always open source and highly audited. And by and large, no one's deploying a production caliber app that uses closed source cryptography implementations. They're using open source cryptography implementations because it can be highly audited. Now, granted, those are used by so many people and so many companies that it is highly audited. That's not necessarily true of an open source app that might be used by a small number of people. But as that app grows, it starts getting much more attention. It starts getting audited by more people. And then my hope is, yes, people will drive towards that, because especially in the cryptocurrency space, it's like, having that level of auditability does lend itself to more trust. And hopefully those are the projects and the tools that don't have the security issues that some of the closed source ones do. That's kind of the hope.
Yeah, absolutely. So diving back into the Edge app as well, Paul. So, it's a wallet, it's an exchange. I mean, it allows people. You guys recently added the ability. I say recently; it's probably been a little bit now, but the ability to shop and earn crypto, right?
It's actually been so. Unfortunately, I gotta say yes and no. So we've always had the ability to shop.
Okay.
crypto, not always, but for quite a long time through a partner called BitRefill.
Yeah.
So today people can buy gift cards to, God, hundreds, and I think BitRefill will probably tell me it's really thousands of merchants worldwide spending, like half a dozen different cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Litecoin, ETH, I think Doge, stable coins and whatnot. And really allow a lot of people to basically like live on crypto practically. You'd be restricted to those merchants with gift cards, which unfortunately are going to be some of the bigger brands in the world as opposed to your mom and pop shops. But yeah, you'd be by and large be able to live on crypto. There was a feature that allowed people to earn crypto from spending. We've unfortunately recently rolled that back. Our partner that deployed that decided to sunset that product in favor of some exciting newer ones, which are going to be coming out pretty soon, which we have not yet announced. So that same partner, instead of paying with fiat and earning crypto, we're going to be rolling out a new feature, which I think is going to knock the socks off our user base. But the ability to earn, unfortunately, that just got deprecated. We may have things similar coming out in the future. Actually, no, we will. So we'll have a much more compelling way to earn crypto and an easier way to earn crypto with this new product that's hopefully coming out in the next, within the month or so.
Nice.
So keep an eye out for that one. And it's in some ways aligned with exchange functionality, because really what do you do when you're buying a gift card? You're effectively swapping your crypto for fiat.
Yeah.
Right. And more ways to do that are coming into Edge, which is really kind of a different way of doing exchange, different definition of exchange. We did roll out a way to spend crypto pretty much everywhere in Brazil. I'm not sure if you caught wind of this feature, but Brazil has a fairly ubiquitous payment method. It's probably more ubiquitous in Brazil than Visa, MasterCard are in the US, which is a payment method called Pix.
Yep, familiar.
And what I love about Pix, unlike Visa and MasterCard, is there's almost no fraud because you don't give someone your Visa, MasterCard number and they take money out of your account. Instead, you scan a QR code and it pushes payment to the merchant. It's much like a blockchain.
Right.
Right. It's like, here's your address. Except your address isn't like this weird looking hash. It can look like a weird looking hash. It could be your email. It could be your phone number. It could be your bank account number. Any of those could be a Pix address. And now, usually you'd go launch your banking app in Brazil, and it would say, okay, scan QR code or enter Pix address, and you send a payment to it. What we did now in Edge is allow you to scan a Pix address from within Edge and pay that Pix address using Tether. For now, it's specifically on the Tron blockchains, relatively cheap and fast.
Yeah.
You pay using Tether, and it automatically converts that into Brazilian real and pays that address. So it is doing this exchange operation, but seamlessly, very quickly, in a matter of seconds. So I really look forward to the next time I go to Brazil. I actually do have a conference that I'm potentially going to go to closer to like end of Q3, Q4, and be able to not take a single real or dollar and use a credit card even once. Just be able to use Edge the entire time. And while we're not, once again, not a payments focused app, really it's like live swap exchange functionality happening before your very eyes, as opposed to like payments. So things like that we're really excited about. As well, we're going to be bringing what I call not fancier, but richer financial service functionality into the app. Right now you can swap, basically become a taker in an exchange, right? People heard the term maker taker. You can be a taker. You could be a maker by virtue of staking, right? That's like an automated market maker. You can earn yield in other ways as well, like staking on FIO, which is not really a taker model. But then soon you'll also be able to borrow. And I think that's a key feature of the financial system that people use banks for. Now you'll be able to do that in Edge, and all self-custody, meaning that there's no company entity. It's all using DeFi protocols, the borrowing and lending. And we aim to also add what I call more advanced trader functionality. Think limit orders, as opposed to just simply being a taker. So all that's coming, and that hopefully helps people understand the definition of what Edge is. If people have ideas, hey, this is what you should call yourself. Shoot me a message. We're open.
Are you thinking of a name change or just the description?
No, not a name change, but almost like what do you call the product?
Right.
At least the current product, because Edge could have multiple products, like we talked about, right?
Yeah.
We could have different apps. But the main app that people download today in the stores, like, well, what do we call that as far as its product definition? That's the one that's kind of a little bit in flux, because it takes that term wallet, but definitely has moved away from what we normally think of as wallets as being payments focused, right? And more financial services exchange focused. And so trading is like Robinhood. Like, what would you call Robinhood? Is kind of where we're trying to go and what we're trying to figure out.
Okay. Yeah. So challenge for anybody. Come up with
challenge.
Yeah, come up with
what it is. I mean,
yeah, crowdsource it. The community typically. I mean, that's how you said that's how you switch. Is that how you switch from Airbits to Edge, or?
That one we didn't crowdsource.
Okay.
Ironically, a little backstory on that. When we were Airbits, we already had an SDK, software development kit, which allows people to build apps that use that same sign-in process that you were talking about and that you enjoyed, Wayne. That hides the keys. You can see the keys if you want, but you don't have to, right? It's encrypted, backed up for you, two-factor protected, whatnot. So we already had a software development kit, and what did we call it? Was it like the Airbits SDK? Our company was called Airbits at the time. The app was called Airbits, right? And then I ran into this guy at a local tech meet up here, general tech meet up here in San Diego, and he had built devices for edge computing. And he was like, I got these IoT. He was like an IoT device startup founder. He's like, what my devices need? Can you help me, Paul? We need edge security. We need something to secure our devices at the edge. I'm like, there might be a fit there, maybe not. But the word rang, and so we called the software toolkit the Edge Security SDK, right? By Airbits. That was kind of the name of the platform versus the app. The app was Airbits. That was the Airbits wallet. Happy to call that one a wallet. It was definitely a wallet. It was payments focused, and then it was the Edge Security platform. And then when we decided to pivot and make Edge or make Airbits more exchange focused, rewrite the app from scratch. And we kind of needed to do that because the language that we written Airbits in didn't lend well to add different chains. It was hard to add Ethereum. It was a C++ app for you technical folks out there. It was hard to add Ethereum, hard to add many of the other chains out there, XRP, Monero, and whatnot. And so we're like, okay, we need to transition to platform. That means rewriting the app almost entirely from scratch with the same architecture, though, right? But what do we call it? Do we call it Airbits 2.0? And it would take us years before we could get all the features in Airbits into Edge. And to this day, there's some features that are in Airbits that we never ported into Edge. So we didn't want to stomp on top of it with a 2.0 that only had a subset of the features. And so that's when we went through this branding exercise. Like, what do we call ourselves? And we actually hired a branding company here in San Diego that has worked with like Microsoft and a bunch of big name brands. And that's when they're like, Edge, just like that, simple as Edge. Create a logo for us. And we've loved it since then. It's nice, it's elegant. Fortunately, there was a really clean domain available, edge.app.
Yeah.
And it speaks well for our mission. And not only was like, where did the word edge even come from? One might ask, right? And it comes from that like edge computing, edge security concept. And that came because if you think about a computer network, right? A network of computers, there's the servers in the center, right? And then there's all the nodes on the outside, which are at the edges of the network. And you can be right outside of the server, so you're kind of at the edge of the server infrastructure, but you can even further out, right? Like the routers, and you can be even further out at people's Wi-Fi points. But what's the furthest from the center of a network? It's people, right? We are the far edges of the network, is people and the devices that we use. And that's what the company represents. It's empowering the edge of the network, right? We don't want to empower the central piece of the network. We want to empower the edge of the network. Right. And that's where Edge Security SDK came from. It's like, hey, that SDK helps you secure the edges of the network, the keys that sit at the edges of the network, the data that's encrypted at the edge of the network. And then we made a full app as opposed to just an SDK that empowers the edges of the network. And we as people are the farthest, from that center, and giving us the power to hold our data, hold our funds, control our information. And that's where the name kind of came from. It all kind of fit, it clicked, it felt great, And I remember that moment. We're like, okay, guys, we are now Edge. It felt exciting. It still does to this day, and it very, very much encapsulates the mission that we have.
Awesome. So great stuff, Paul. Definitely, I've told you before we even started this, I'm a big fan of what you guys do. I like to focus on
Thank you.
onboarding new people. You kind of hinted there where people can find out more about the Edge app and experience all the different features of it. You want to say that again just in case they might have missed it?
Edge.app.
Right.
About as easy as it gets, right?
Yeah.
From Edge.app, you can scroll to the bottom, you get it on Twitter, Facebook, Discord, and all the other places and whatnot. But definitely it shouldn't be too hard for people to find, the company at Edge.app. And there are, as many people know, many imposters in this world. There's probably like an edgewallet.io out there, .com, and blah, blah, blah. And there's Twitter handles that are all wrong. And I'm impersonated on Twitter. But the one thing that's nice is you can always go to edge.app and from there find me. Like I'm on the About page. Follow me on Twitter. That's the official place. And know that you kind of got the right person, and also have the right company, the right team, right app. Links to our app store listings as well. You could download the Android app directly from our website as opposed to having to go to the app stores. Should you be app store free? So anyway, yeah, Edge.app. That's it.
Awesome. And definitely if anybody listening is out near San Diego, right, stop
Come
in.
by.
Go by, check out the
This is
meetup.
not a fake background. Unlike, whenever Wayne ends up putting on his green screen, this is real with real people, hanging out in the, that's the harbor and the waterfront park, which is actually a kid's playground, right across the street from our office. So definitely invite people to come on by and say hi.
Nice. Yeah, I don't have a good view behind me, so it's going to be artificially added.
Maybe we'll do this podcast again when you're here in San Diego, and we can actually pull up another chair, side by side podcast style.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
Definitely want to get out there. Like I said, just trying to figure out, how to make it work, or hell, maybe just have to take a special trip.
Yeah, or hop skip from Vegas, from LA, or just a great spot to go to in and of itself. Take the family and do a little vacay here.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
cool.
Absolutely cool. Well, Paul, thanks again for joining us today, man. It's been a pleasure to get to know more about you, your background, what you're doing for the space. Like I said before, I'm always a fan of projects and companies and tech that's really bringing more people in this space, making it easy. One of the first things I learned when I got into this, when I did finally jump in, I was like, okay, I'm going to buy some Bitcoin after ignoring it for a few years. I was like, this is complicated. When I went to send, I bought my first Bitcoin from a Bitcoin ATM. I was like, what is this long wallet address that I've got to do something with?
That's what Theo's for.
Yeah. So that's kind of, I focused on making it simpler through education, and it just pairs greatly with great user interfaces like you have, like what Theo provides, to where it makes the process super easy. You mentioned Apple earlier, right? Apple doesn't have the best phone technology out there. What they did is they made an operating system that's so simple for people to use, right? That's how they got such notoriety. Yeah, yeah.
And I'll say one thing: a lot of people have a focus on education. I know you do. We have a blog series that we call Edge Education. We're closely tied with the C4 team, which is one of Andreas Antonopoulos's initiatives. But the funny thing is, what kind of wrenches at my heart is my aim is to make all of those efforts obsolete.
Yeah.
Where education just isn't needed.
It's not necessary.
It's not necessary because people are using products that are just that straightforward. Probably the only education that would still be needed is the why.
Yeah.
The why of crypto. But once they get the why, there's nothing left after that. Like the products just speak for themselves.
Yeah.
And there's not the, well, how do I do this? Or how do I do that? It's the why you do this, why you do that. The how is just taken care of by the products.
Yeah, and they don't even need to understand or realize in some cases that they're using the technology. It's just the underlying technology. I tell people that all the time. You're not even going to really do that. And I kind of, when I'm teaching people over the years about how to do this and how to do that within the space, they're like, oh, why is it so complicated? I said, well, it's going to get easier. It's going to be super simple one day. But, if you're looking to also take advantage of being an early adopter of this technology and benefit from it, then you've got to experience the pain points now, because the people that come in when it's super easy to use, they're going to experience the benefit of using it, but not taking advantage of being an early adopter.
Exactly. That's the pain point.
Yeah.
You know, that's why we're here.
Absolutely.
To make it easier for people, but also admittedly to kind of benefit from being early.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. So,
All right.
Paul, thanks for joining us. Thanks for.
Pleasure as always.
Absolutely, man. Looking forward to getting out there. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we will see you all on the next episode.